provided comprehensive benefits. We pioneered a 4-day work week. And what we saw is that it actually didn't increase productivity until we got the same amount done in less time. We had universal gender-neutral paternal leave, or whether you were adopting a child or having one yourself. And I do think that on the executive council, when you're considering contracts with different vendors, that you need to take a value-based approach. You don't want to go with the lowest bidder on these contracts every single time, because often, whoever is bidding the lowest amount, they are not providing safe working conditions, they're not providing a livable wage. What we need to do is look at the comprehensive suite of services that they are delivering to the state and providing to their workers. I think that Andrew Walensky was particularly good at advocating for this and advocating for teachers, both on the executive council and in the courts. And I plan to continue that tradition.
Karen, what will you bring to the table regarding workers' rights?
Thank you. I'll start personally, talk about the city, and I'll talk about my work at the state level briefly. When I was an undergrad at Dartmouth, I was a work-study student, and I remember the challenge of being a work-study student on campus. And so, personally, that was not what students were organizing at the time, but I supported the employees at Dartmouth as an undergrad, and then later on as I worked on campus. I didn't grow up in a union family, so it was new to me, but I started to learn about unions as an undergrad. When I became a city councilor, I was on the other side of unions. The city of Lebanon has 4 unions, and I have been an advocate for unions at the city level, and we have negotiated working conditions, improved working conditions. Our firefighters, for example, they wanted to move to a 24-hour shift, and that was something that we did in the city of Lebanon. Paternity care as well, or paternity leave as well. I've also supported, firefighters are at an increased risk for cancer because of the work that they do. And in Lebanon, we are replacing their turnout gear with PFAS-free turnout gear. So worker conditions, salaries, those are something that I support, that people who work hard should be compensated fairly. And I've also advocated, and I've been proud to receive the support of our firefighters union in Lebanon and the professional firefighters of New Hampshire for past city council elections. At the state level, I have been an ardent supporter of workers' rights. So you may know that over the years there is this perennial attack on labor rights in New Hampshire called Right to Work, trying to make it more difficult for workers to organize in our state. I have used my voice as a city councilor to testify in Concord against right to work legislation. I have also testified in favor of improved working conditions, like applying OSHA, bringing OSHA standards to public employees. I have also testified, teachers' unions have been under attack over the years, and I have testified on numerous pieces of legislation to support teachers in the workplace as well. So from my own personal experience to the city council locally to the state level, I think you'll find that I've been a consistent voice, a champion for labor rights, and you can count on me to do that at the executive council table. Former executive councilor Colin Van Oostern, who represented this district when it was in a different map, there's a good example of how executive councilors can do this. This was back in the mid-2000s, in the 2012, right around then. Fairpoint was on strike. You might remember that. Fairpoint was on strike. And, the executive council doesn't get to vote directly on that. That was a matter between the union and the company. But what Colin Van Oostern did was he used that contract power, and he insisted that the state would not take up their contract. They would not take that contract up until Fairpoint came, until management came to the table to negotiate with labor. And so he was able to use that power. The executive council has formal power of what they vote on. They also have informal power. And that's something that I've observed over the years, is how executive counselors can use both their formal and their informal power to be leaders on different issues and to make change happen. So I certainly have learned from people like Colin Van Ostern, Andy Valinsky, Cindy Warmington, Mike Cryans, and for that matter, Ray Burton, if we're going to go back far enough, about how you can use the levers of government as an executive counselor to work for good.